my pleasure now to introduce to you the great, the one, the only Rick Barry. Those of you that don't know, Rick Barry is one of the best outside shooters that Shaw basketball ever had. Unfortunately, we played most of our games inside. Rick Barry.
What Joe didn't mention is always shot a lot better and played a lot better when he was guarding me. First of all, it's really good to see all you white right-wing kooks out there again. I'd like to start off with a couple quick facts. The Obama economy utilizes a system of carefully monitored checks and balances. He writes the checks.
Hey! We can't hear anybody!
First of all, I want to give you a couple quick facts. The Obama economy utilizes a system of carefully monitored checks and balances. He writes the checks, you pay the balances. Have you heard that Obamacare has started a new football division? There's already 4 teams. The Steelers, the Chargers, the Bills, and the Lions. Let me start by saying that in 2008, our budget deficit was a little over $400 billion. At the end of 2009, it stood at $1.4 trillion. I don't want to think about what it's going to be at the end of this year. You know, it's hard to grasp just how much $1 trillion is, so let me try to give you some examples. A million seconds is 11.5 days. A billion seconds is 32 years. A trillion seconds is 32,000 years. A stack of $100 bills totaling $1 million would be about 4 feet high, which is about like this. A stack of 1 trillion $100 bills stacked end on end would be almost 789 miles high. So maybe that gives you a little perspective as to how much $1 trillion is. So now we have this $787 billion stimulus package. Close to $1 trillion, huh? Despite what the administration says, there is no evidence it has done anything to stop job loss or improve the economy. 4 million jobs have been lost since the stimulus package was enacted. It is called Keynesian economics, where the belief is that the government can spend our way into prosperity. It has been tried many times, but it's never worked. Why they would think it would work this time, we don't know. Do you and your family think you can spend your way into prosperity by running up credit card bills? Well, it's no different with the government. As this fails, there is one big problem. We don't get our money back, and the government does not have the money to cover it. So how do we pay for it? Kettig, how do we pay for it?
Well, we'll just put it on the old charge card. We'll pay it later. Certainly, we can hope to help those that are less fortunate and less industrious than we are, and we need to help those people in our society. So we'll just put it on the charge card.
Boy, I feel better already, Kettig. Next we have Social Security. Social Security has been called a Ponzi scheme that would make Bernie Madoff blush. Social Security takes money from later taxpayers to pay benefits to earlier or now retired taxpayers. Like a Ponzi scheme, Social Security will not be able to recruit enough new taxpayers fast enough to continue to pay promised benefits to previous investors. Each year, there are fewer young workers relative to retirees. The dark fact is, and something our politicians don't want to admit to, is Social Security will eventually collapse. In 1950, there were 16.5 workers for every retiree. Now there are 3.5 workers to every retiree. 20 years from now, it is estimated there will be 2 workers for every retiree. Well, you don't have to be a math whiz to see what is happening. Our leaders do not have the guts to address this issue. As it seems, they have only their own interests at heart. So how do we pay for this, Kettig?
I don't know. What am I supposed to do? Pull it out of my butt?
Anything that works. I'm feeling really good now. How did you do that?
It's easy. Congress does it all the time.
That brings us to our wonderful new health care system. We already know Congress took the books to get the proposed cost below $1 trillion. Remember that number, $1 trillion? For example, the Medicare fees to doctors or the doctor fix was mysteriously left off of the cost of Obamacare to the public. The estimate of the cost of $208 billion over 10 years would have totally wiped out all the deficit reduction and left us $59 billion in the red. It would have put the perceived cost at well over $1 trillion, well over the $1 trillion price tag. A cost the liberals figured the public simply would not stand for. So they, in a sense, blatantly lied to us. In 1965, Medicare was enacted. And again, the government pulled the wool over our eyes as to the real costs. That initial year, the costs were put at about $3 billion a year. By 1990, they told the public that the cost of Medicare would run about $12 billion. The actual cost in 1990, $107 billion. By 2007, that cost has spiraled to $432 billion, and Medicare is essentially bankrupt. The actual cost has outpaced the original estimates 11 times more than what they told us. Now, I hate to say this, and I don't want to be a fearmonger, but those of us paying attention know the same scenario is going to play out with Obamacare. Instead of the initial estimated cost being just under $1 trillion, it will, like Medicare, soar to over $10 trillion or more. Our country will be bankrupt, and you can kiss the United States as we know it goodbye. The founders warned us a long time ago of the horrors of allowing government to get involved in the private sector. Now it is playing out right before our eyes. But wait, Mr. Coghill might just have a solution.
A bigger MasterCard, it keeps getting big.
Gee, Kettig, this is great getting Congress to increase the spending limit all the time, but I'm afraid we're going to need a co-signer on this huge amount of debt.
What do you mean, a co-signer?
Well, unfortunately, Kettig, we'll both be dead before we even begin to pay this debt back.
Well, just a minute. I think I've got a co-signer.
I got a co-sign. Our baby. Our baby.